This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. I'm your host, Rabanzo. This podcast features conversations with me and indie music artists. Conversations intended to help other indie musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Hey there, loyal listeners. Would you like to help other independent musicians find this podcast? Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast service. It really helps. Would you like to support the podcast? Join the Unstarving Musician community. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com and join right there on the homepage. If you're an independent musician, you'll be glad you joined because I share tips and lessons you can use in your music journey. And this isn't just coming from me and my years of experience as a gigging musician. It also comes from the hundreds of other musicians and songwriters I've talked to as part of the Unstarving Musician Project, including those I've interviewed for this podcast. And it's all free, just for being part of the community. Another way to support the podcast is to pick up a copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, how to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. You can get your very own paperback or Kindle version on Amazon, and you can find it just about anywhere fine ebooks are sold. Have you heard of Bandzoogle? They've come up on this podcast several times. Many of my guests use it to power their artist websites. From garage bands to Grammy winners, Bandzoogle powers websites for tons of musicians around the world. Their simple step-by-step system will get you online in minutes. Lots of mobile-friendly templates you can use to customize your design and content. It's built by musicians for musicians. Check out all the features Bandzoogle has. A merch and download store to sell music and merch commission-free right on your website. A tour calendar to promote your shows and sell tickets commission-free. Mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send professional-looking emails and newsletters. Integrations to pull in content from all of your socials, including Twitter, Instagram, and SoundCloud. And, very important here, live support from a musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial. Use the promo code RABONZO to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code RABONZO to build your artist website today. In 1998, my guest, Glass Hamlet, moved from Moscow, Russia to New York, where he pursued an education in the creative arts. He has worked in the areas of fashion, acting, modeling, photography, and lately, songwriting. He is a rapper who's transitioned from those other creative fields into songwriting, and we talk about that transition and the challenges it has presented for him personally, including building a community of fellow musicians and finding mentors in the music industry, this whole world that he's new to. He talks about lessons he's learned where social media engagement is concerned and where he uses music to bring value to others. We also discuss his PR rep. He has a great relationship with her. And you, my lucky listener, will hear a track called Go Solo from his latest release. All right, here is me and Glass Hamlet. So I want to start by asking about your creative background. So you've worked as a photographer, cinematographer, actor, and model. Per Renee Moody, your PR rep, who, by the way, thank her for, I have already, but thank her anyway for me for introducing us. But I kind of want to ask, when did your creative career begin?
Well, I guess we can start at the very, very beginning. I mean, I currently reside in New York City. New York City is kind of a place that you can everything seems possible. And so from a very, very early age, I would always play the guitar and I would always write poetry. I actually was born and raised in Moscow until I moved to New York. And so poetry is a big part of our upbringing. We're always made to like memorize poems. And so that definitely had an impact. But I transitioned to acting throughout high school. And then when I finally moved to New York, I realized that, I still want, while I'm pursuing acting and still doing like a little bit of songwriting and poetry on the side, what is the most creative way that I can sustain myself? And my father was a photographer, so I picked up a camera and kind of just started winging it, and that has turned into an entire career. And now I do a lot of cinematography work and commercial photography. But in the interim, the poetry became something far more serious. And so I started to do a lot of spoken word poetry around New York. And then at a certain point, I transitioned to music. And that's been going on for the past couple of years. And now we're here today.
Did you have yourself embedded with the music community because of all the things that you were doing and the music that you had already, casual as it may have been before? Did you already have some, I guess, connections or relationships, a community?
You know what? Strangely enough, I'm still looking for that community, just because most of my friends are actors, and we would go to shows, but I mean, we didn't really have that many musicians in our social circles, and I was kind of the only one who was, sneaking away on weekends to just like perform at poetry open mics. And so when I started getting into music, the poetry kind of like translated into rap. I was like, what is the best way that I can scale this? And as that happened, it kind of fell in this weird no man's land where it wasn't quite hip hop. It wasn't quite poetry. It wasn't quite this. It wasn't quite that. And so finding, kind of like people of the same ilk has been kind of tough. Now, as I started to perform and as I started to like perform with other hip hop artists and other musicians, then my social circle started to grow more or less. But I'm still kind of looking for that tight knit circle that we always hear about, the crew, if you will. Yeah. Because now I have a lot of friends that are doing so many different things, and it's super inspirational. But my path has been quite, I've been walking this solo for quite some time.
I can relate to that feeling because I moved away from the U.S. almost 3 years ago now. And so consequently, I got myself out of a lot of regular meetings when I did that. But as not as a songwriter, but as a podcaster and marketeer, if I'm not careful, I'm operating in a vacuum quite a bit. So I can relate to that degree. When you say that your music landed in no man's land, I'm assuming that sort of has course corrected itself, but what was it about it? Because maybe it's changed a lot, but when I was listening to some tunes today, and I listened to some when Renee first sent your info to me, it sounds, I don't know if I should say mainstream, but nothing about it was so off the wall that I wouldn't have thought that there would be a problem for it or you fitting in anywhere.
Well, I guess that's actually the first time I've heard my music called mainstream. So I think thank you. But what happened? I guess what I've seen with we can take just regular prose writers, for instance. In the beginning of their career, they're trying to prove themselves, and they try to show themselves in the best possible light. And I was super, super green, and I kind of come from a literary background more than a hip hop background. And so I made everything way too complex, even for my own good.
You were too highbrow.
Yeah, way too highbrow. And everybody was like, Pasha, I can't listen to this without a freaking thesaurus. And I'm like, well, you guys just don't get it. And as I started to kind of, take positive critique of my work, and not positive, meaning like just proper critique of my music. I started to practice more and more and write more and more, and then I finally got to the point where I started to simplify, and that's when people started to connect with the music more. But even so, I still try to convey I try to tell a story with every single song. And because it still lives in the hip hop world, and because everything that is mainstream is kind of going in the hyper simplified, almost like mumble rap direction, when I present a lot of my stuff, it's still met with a bit of a question mark. And I mean, that's an incredible challenge for me. And I'm super excited to continue to shape my music in a way that becomes more accessible to everybody, but it's still, people still find it a fairly new sound, and they're still getting used to it. If that makes any sense.
So it's really, it makes perfect sense. I mean, or if what I'm about to say is correct, but because the style of music you've chosen is so bound to the lyrics, and most people would say any good song is, but even more so in your genre, therein have lied the the complications. Have you considered doing the kind of preface story like at your shows, the kind of background preface to these things? Because you probably, I didn't think about it, but you probably are exposing people to a lot of things they haven't been exposed to, particularly the U.S. audience. Have you taken that approach or considered it?
Actually, that's a fantastic observation, because that's the only way that I can even perform. I try to weave a heavy narrative prior to starting any track, because from what I've gathered, people need to, and again, I'm not trying to say that, my music must be, deconstructed and studied and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm trying to, just have people vibe with the music, but people, really vibe with it after they listen to it a few times. And at a show, when nobody has ever heard your music, and all of a sudden you're getting into, hyper complex rhyme structures by even trying to tell a story, it just doesn't resonate. And so, I had a small project which was kind of telling the tale of falling in love with a girl overseas, and how, the difficulties of that, and all of the self-doubt and of the entire thing. And so, I kind of laid it out step by step, and with every single step that we took followed a song. And that was something that people really connected with. And it was also the first time at a show I saw people kind of stop and, listen to the performer, as opposed to just be a passive person that is just enjoying a good time. Just somebody happens to be on stage, doing their thing. So yeah, that's an integral part of all of my shows.
When did you, how old were you when you moved to New York? Oh, it's
And I was 8 years old, and I moved to New Jersey. Went to high school in New Jersey, and then college. I finally moved over to Manhattan, and I've been in Manhattan ever since.
Okay. Skype just did something really weird. I thought I completely lost you, but then you came back in, and it may have buffered everything you said. Did you say anything before 8 years old?
No. I moved to New Jersey when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
I went to high school in New Jersey, and then I bounced to Manhattan for college, and then stayed. Okay.
And how did you meet Renee, your PR rep?
So I had the lead in a short film that started to get a lot of traction via the festival circuit. And I still do a little bit of acting, but at that point, that was the only thing that I did. And Renee happened to see that film, and we weren't acquainted at that point. But when I transitioned completely into music, I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And at that point, I was just completely overwhelmed. I didn't even know where to start. And so I kind of put out this cry for help on Instagram. I was like, "Hey guys, if anybody can help me out with this." And then Renee reached out, and she has been incredible. I mean, this really, that's when I realized that, you need a team, and you need people that can, that are so highly qualified in very narrow facets of the entire process that, one person can't do it alone. And so I've been incredibly grateful for that point in my career, I guess. And we've been working together ever since.
That's cool. She spoke highly of you when she made the introduction in an email. So
yeah, I wouldn't be able to do anything without her, honestly.
What particularly did you feel clueless about when you made that outreach on Instagram?
Well, so one of the things that I tried to do, in addition to, focus on the work itself, was model my, you have all of these artists that are around us that are very, very successful. It's like, what's the best? And I mean, they've also struggled through all of these, career growth impasses. So I was like, let me see if I can model what I do, based on somebody who is where I want to be. And that's when I realized that everybody has such a unique path, and that growth is so non-linear. And there are so many pieces of everybody's stories that just, that information isn't out there to even learn from. And it just seemed like a very vast open ocean of things that I could be doing or not be doing. And I was like, all right, so I have the music under control. I'm writing that. I'm like, that's one thing that I know I can physically touch with my hands and complete. But the rest of it was just, something that I never even thought about. And so I got a little bit overwhelmed with all of it. And that's when, I started reaching out for help.
Yeah, understandable. As a photographer and I don't know if you still model, but I'll say former or maybe current model and actor, did you already have some social cred on like Instagram? It looks like you do quite well there. That helped you a little bit?
Okay. So I have to say, again, New York, you do a lot of things to sustain. I was doing the whole modeling thing, and that was, I was fairly successful while I was doing that. I flew overseas to Paris and Milan for Fashion Week and all that kind of stuff. And at the time I was also posting the sexy shirtless pics and all that. And so I accrued a fairly significant following that was, specifically, they were drawn to that sort of content. And then I was like, well, this is fantastic. I already have this platform that I can stand on, and now I can just show my art and everybody will love it. You could not believe the fall off of engagement. I was like, my songs and this and that, nobody gave a shit. And, to this day, I'm like, God damn it, I have all of these completely inactive followers, with little engagement. But, again, it's one of those things that it's okay. That happened. I got over it. I got over my own ego, and I realized that, I am building from the ground up. And, sometimes, social media clout does translate to high engagement with new content. Mm-hmm. But if it's such a orthogonal jump to a completely new territory, some people just get confused and are like, all right, I'm not about this anymore.
What a bunch of shallow pieces of shit those people were. They're all into your sexy pics. And then when you start doing other important stuff.
Just a small aside. So, about 2 weeks ago, I reached out to one of my good friends, and he's a very, very successful actor. He's currently the lead in a series shooting over in LA. And I was like, dude, you've known me for, since childhood, basically. And you're already like, look at the following that you've amassed and where you are. Can you just give me some sort of advice? Like, what do I do? I have these singles coming out. I have the album coming out. Like, I'm really worried. I'm like, how should I do this right? And he was like, well, man, you always have that one button to push. I'm like, what do you mean one button? What button to push? He was like, well, Instagram is a very visual platform, and you're a good looking guy. And I was like, hold on a second, where's this going? He was like, look, man, I mean, if you post a couple sexy pics, all of a sudden you have you have that engagement back. And I was like, man, why does it always come back to that?
Well, has it helped to, did that help?
The thing is, again, it'll be, I think those types of methods have their place for, every once in a while to sprinkle a little bit of variety. But again, I'm looking to build an audience based on where I see the tomorrow me being.
Sure.
And that's based heavily in the things that I produced, based heavily on the kind of service that I want to bring to the community. And I think, again, I'll just be accruing very valueless appreciation that won't be there to back me up when I truly need it in the future.
It's going to be tough, man. You sound pretty intellectual. I think that some of these shallow folks are going to. I'm just kidding. I'm glad to hear that you're finding some amusement in it, that you can laugh at it. I'm sure it's had some moments where it's not all, something that you feel like you can laugh at, but it's great that you are. So let's talk about the new work that you've been doing as of late. We were talking about featuring something on here, and we're sounds like we may not be 100% decided which track it'll be, but we talked about Go Solo, and I also checked out Too Much Love, and I assume both of those will be on the album Letters of an Anxious Avoidance.
No. Those are actually just standalone singles.
Okay. Oh, cool. Good for you. More material.
Yeah.
So those are. I did not make the opportunity to watch Go Solo. I checked out Too Much Love. I thought it was really cool, and by that point, I had learned of your other creative talents, and I thought, well, okay, makes sense. If he didn't have his hand right in creating that, from the visual perspective, you certainly had, were able to more easily than some convey what you wanted to do. I had read that I believe it was for Too Much Love that you had done, you'd been traveling when you made it. And I guess both Renee and your bio talk about which may be another part of your problem with getting people on, and I'm saying that jokingly, the multicultural aspect of what you do. I mean, I caught that right away when you start Too Much Love. So tell me about the creative process of that particular single, and then I'd love to hear more about the other one and the album that you're working on.
Yeah, so Too Much Love was kind of so when I usually write something, I get very, very methodical, and I sit on the song for quite some time, and the process is actually quite long and fairly painstaking when I have a very concrete thing that I want to say, and I'm trying to convey it in the most aesthetically pleasing and accurate way possible. And I was at the time performing with a fantastic artist here in New York, and she basically she freestyles off the top of she's absolute genius person, and I look up to her greatly, and her verse structure is just incredible. And I was like, yo, Anna, can you help me out with this? Like, what should I be doing? And she's like, why don't you just write, just pick a beat and just start laying bars down and let it flow. Like, that's the most important thing. And I was like, wow, that's not really something that I, just write about anything. And as I started writing that song, I had just more fun with that one than any other composition that I've worked on. And I think that truly conveys in the video and also in the lyrics. It's kind of just like a silly goose of a song and a little bit of a departure from my usual style. And I tried to weave in a lot of different things. There's like some Spanish bars in there, and there's some Russian. I lived in Spain for a little bit of time, and I'm from Russia, and so those are all very important aspects. And just the message of creating for you. I think that's ultimately what I wanted to say with that song. And the chorus is, there's too much love. Why can't it be this way always? And I think there is always too much love. It's just that sometimes we're not dialed into that frequency, and it's always there. And it's not that way always, usually because, we lose focus, or we lose our openness. And the video itself, if you guys actually get a chance to check it out. So my buddy and I, who's never been out of the country before, he was like, dude, we need to plan this crazy Euro trip. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so we did a road trip from Zurich to Copenhagen through Germany and the Netherlands. So we stopped in Amsterdam as well. And so I had a little camera with us, and my friend wasn't a cinematographer, but I was able to direct him as best as I possibly could. And yeah, we kind of just, told this tale in all these different locations. And we even, the funnest part of the entire journey was we stopped in this little German town called Heidelberg, which is the most romantic looking fairy tale German village city. And so the most famous schnitzel restaurant was this place called Schnitzel House. And you walk in, and it used to be this old carpenter shop, and they have like Gruner on coming out like fresh out of the casket. Mm-hmm. What are they? The barrel, right out of the barrel, and it was ice cold, and we're having such a fantastic time. We walk up to the owner, and we're like, hey, so we're doing this little project. Would it be cool if we can shoot here? And he looked at us. He was like, hell yeah, come back here tomorrow 1, and the place is yours. And this was so shocking to us because in New York, like, it's such a hassle to get anybody to agree to help you. And over there, they're just so accommodating and so nice. And we have this beautiful scene in this, like, possibly the coolest restaurant I've ever been. And that also made its way into the video. So yeah, that's kind of that project.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I will go back and watch the video with a new lens, and I'll definitely have a link to the video in the show notes for those of you that are listening or who forget the name of the song or whatever when you're trying to find it. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. And then what about the album? Tell me about that. Where are you at?
Ooh, the album. Yeah. So oh man, we still have a couple final little things to do, and then it's off to mastering. But when our hearts are suffering the most, we kind of make the best art, if you will. And I went through a very tumultuous breakup last year, and I was like, all right, I'm feeling kind of down, but what would be, a good way to, like, how can this process that is happening to me, how can I transmute this into something that people could not benefit from, but into something in which people can find value. And I was like, well, let me see if I can kind of recant the entire process of what has happened. And so I slightly fictionalized it, but it was mostly based on, the process of, when you start to doubt yourself within the relationship, how the ego starts to overwhelm you in the sense that it tries to kind of feed you all these lies why you should or should not be in a relationship, to the point of, looking your lover in the face and saying, this is no longer. And then everything that happens subsequently when you realize that you might have made a wrong decision and that person isn't responding to you anymore. And the emotional process of trying to reach out back to them and say, hey, look, I see all this with fresh eyes. And so the title of the album itself is Letters of an Anxious Avoidant. And it's a bit of a complex title, but it's based on attachment theory, which basically says that the type of attachment that you have as a baby with your primary caregiver is the type of attachment that you have with other people throughout your life. And as I was going through this breakup, one of my friends, who was like, here, just read this book. And it was on attachment theory. And I saw all of the almost unconscious processes that were happening and how I was basically not in control of the entire situation. And it blew my mind. And a lot of these songs are kind of indicators of the things that we do when we feel thwarted. And for instance, if we feel underappreciated, some people tend to push their partner away. And this happens completely on a unconscious level. Or, on the flip side of that, when we feel underappreciated, some people tend to overwhelm their partner with that sort of neediness that also tends to not serve the situation. And I one, I wanted to shed light on this theory, this attachment theory, because it brought a lot of clarity to my current relationships, as well as stand as a clear indicator of, what every single song is. And the album isn't all about just this big breakup. There are just, tracks about random topics, this and that, but most of the songs were either inspired by this person or were kind of written directly for that person. But that's how I formulated that project, and currently we're in the last final stages of completion, and hopefully it'll be out this summer.
Cool, that's exciting. Glass, I think part of your problem is that your friends are too smart as well, because they're sending you to these books that are clearly above the listening audience's audience's mind.
I lost you again.
Sorry. Yeah, I was teasing you that you clearly hang out with people that give you things like that book that are clearly above the heads of most of your listening audience. But I'm kidding again.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's just that, it's funny when you're just exposed to something that is, I didn't know any of this stuff beforehand, and now I do. And I'm like, holy crap, I was such an idiot. And I just want to share with people that, hey, look, there's another, dimension to a lot of the things that we're going through. Yeah,
absolutely. What, Anna, who you mentioned, is she a recording artist as well?
Yeah, Anna Diorio. She, I believe 2 or 3 months ago, she released I think it was her first LP. Incredible jazz vocalist, but just fantastic hip hop artist. And she was in New York, and now she's based out of LA. I think she's on tour right now as of this date.
And is that, I'm going to guess because it's fun here with her name, but is it D-I and then Oreo like the cookie by chance?
It's Diorio, Diorio.
Man, I was close. Wouldn't it have been more awesome if it was like the cookie?
Yeah.
I would like to check her out. So I have to bring it up. It gets talked to.
I can't. This is how scatterbrained I am. She's on my album. We have a. She's featured on the album.
Cool. Well, I look forward to hearing that. I'm gonna check her out for sure. Well, she made a recommendation to you, which is worth circling back to for people that are listening, because it's come up in different forms. But and I find it particularly interesting in your case because of the type of music that you make. And she said, pick a beat and just write. And so I've had other artists. Something similar got introduced to me many episodes back with a couple who play together, Pete and Crystal Demore, and they go by the name Ordinary Elephant, and they turned me on to something called object writing, which I believe may stem partly from a book called Writing Better Lyrics, and I'll put all this in the show notes for those of you that are trying to write this down or hoping you'll remember it. But with the object writing, it was a practice maybe not too dissimilar to the one that Anna got you on, where Pete and Crystal learned about it at a songwriting workshop, and that was just to take 20 minutes a day and freeform write focused on a single object, but try to write with all the senses in mind, describe that object. But it was just another form of picking a beat, if you will, or picking an object. And it sounds like it helped you when Anna gave you that advice. It sort of got you started where you maybe felt a little stuck.
Yeah, basically, I found in the way that I write, and it's different for all songwriters, but for me, I need to have a beat that I connect with, and then the lyrics come subsequently. And so I found a beat that I really vibed with, and the fluidity with which the lyrics came was quite surprising to me, because usually I kind of sit and I'm like, all right, what is the general theme, or what is the message that I want to convey, and then I kind of backwards engineer the song to accommodate that. And as this was kind of a different process in the sense that there was a general theme that emerged out of the kind of rubble of lyrics, but that happened after the fact rather than before. Now, since then, I haven't really returned to that particular form of writing, and it was a fantastic exercise to practice. But I kind of, I'm more or less trying to develop my sort of style, which is going back to, okay, what is the concrete thing that I want to say, and then what's the best way to do it?
So, what is if you could sum it up in a sentence, what is that style?
Well, right now, and this is something that I've sort of gained from a Dutch rapper, and he does a lot of pop rap and pop hip hop. Incredibly talented artist. But he was like, "Look, man, I mean, I don't know why you start with the verses. You have to start with the hook. Like, no matter what, the hook is what's gonna, bring the people in, and everything needs to stem from that." And so I've started to be like, okay, so if the theme is, for my recent project, Go Solo, which is recanting, the longevity of the creative process, meaning, from when we start to when we ultimately achieve some sort of recognition, and the difficulty that's found within. And I started with the hook, and the hook was again very simple, and it just said, I don't want to go solo, and this shit is taking so long, but as I go up, we all go. And from there, I sort of really sat in that sentiment, and the rest of the lyrics kind of just came. And so I've been trying to, or I have been writing the majority of my recent tracks for the past probably year and a half, starting always with the hook, trying to find something that is very, very melodic, very, very simple, a distillation of the entire song, and then going into the more complex verses where I feel most comfortable, usually.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to back up to something else we talked about a little earlier. When we were discussing how starting off you felt a little lost, you did an outreach and Renee responded. You said that you observed the careers of others or some others, and that you, not your exact words, but it sounded like you were saying you started thinking about a model for what you were going to do. And I don't know if that was part business, part music, or all music, but do you recall what that model was? Could you describe it?
Well, I can recall that at that time it was completely unsuccessful, and at this time currently I'm still looking for that, for this model of creating the thing that we love doing, and making that into the vehicle of our sustenance.
Sure.
And so at that point, again, I didn't have any history as an artist. So it was very difficult for me to reach out to anybody who is at any certain level of success without either just getting brushed off almost immediately or not even getting through. But recently I started to kind of do the same thing where, I have a couple of years underneath my belt. I've, amassed a small but loyal community of people who, I communicate with through my work. And I was like, okay, now that I've sort of done a lot of the grinding on my own, let's see if I can kind of reach out to the people that I listen to and that I look up to that are, just a few steps ahead of me. And I mean, this was primarily for the reason of being like, look, guys, like, tell me where, are we allowed to curse on this podcast, by the way?
Too late.
Too late.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Sure. You can say whatever the fuck you want. I always wanted to say that, by the way.
Yeah. No, I kind of just wanted to reach out to dope artists and be like, guys, where am I fucking up? Like, mentor me. And I know that's a lot to ask. And in any sort of field, we do look for those people that can truly, show us the way. And that's sort of what I'm looking for right now. It's like, mentor me and then just tell me what I'm doing wrong or what I can be doing better. And again, I've started to reach out to a lot of people. It's been a fairly fruitless endeavor as of yet. And I think, it's been indicative of the fact that perhaps I still haven't put in enough time to make such a request. Now, granted, everybody's situation is different. You can be very, very lucky. You could reach out and the person could just be like, oh, hell yeah, I totally vibe the only single that you have out right now. And yeah, let me know what advice you need. But I think right now I just need to kind of like double down on again, the only thing that I have under control, and that is the quality of my work. And, as time goes on, I mean, the growth is still fairly consistent. And I'm super grateful for the people that do connect with my music and come back. But I do realize that the path and road ahead is still very, very long. And I'm still going to need to flounder for a little bit. But I know that, the music is getting better, and I'm doing at least everything that I can at this point in time that's within my control.
Well, I have a couple things for you, maybe, that would be useful. And if not for you, perhaps somebody who's listening that can completely relate. But
of course,
I had a not too long ago episode with a gal called Jana Pokop, and it looks like Pochop, Pochop. I'll if I don't see the episode number here, I'll send it to you if you're interested. And certainly you can search for her, anyone listening, on unstarvingmusician.com. But she told a story that I believe was fairly early in the conversation about moving from New Mexico, I believe it was, to Austin. And now I don't remember, I'm struggling to remember where she was in terms of how long she'd been performing, but she met an artist, I think at a live show, really loved her, happened to be from Austin. She introduced herself to her, and it may have been at that show, and said she really, really liked her work, and she basically wanted to, she liked her work so much she wanted to be around her more, so she said, can I help you out? Can I maybe work your merch table at one of your shows? And so she did, and they became good friends, and then Jana just happened to be quite a whiz with social media for music, for the type of thing that she was doing as an indie artist. And so she started doing work for this same artist, helping her with her social, probably at this point all volunteer stuff for her. But that led to a lot of mentorship from that artist, and it also led to a lot of paying clients where she specializes in social media for independent musicians. And so I guess the moral of that story is she found someone she really liked and admired a lot. She asked if she could help them. And then that led to, I think, the kind of things that she needed, which maybe would work in your world. The other thing I was going to mention, I don't know if you've heard of this event that's coming, and full disclosure here. So the co-creator is Bree Noble. She's a great person. She's been on the podcast like 3 times. But 2 of those times, she asked me if I'd be interested in having her on to talk about this event she does. She's doing the 2nd annual one, and it's called the Profitable Musician Summit. Have you heard of it by chance?
I have not, no.
Okay, so she has like a day-long thing. She's pre-recorded expert presentations / interviews on various topics. And this year's focus, as the title might suggest, is about helping musicians keep more of the money that they make and to make more money. So it's a day-long thing, virtual summit, and it's free access, I think, for more than just that one day. And then she has, this is where the full disclosure part comes in. So she made me an affiliate partner for it again for the 2nd year. But so what she does, she spends all this time putting together this beautiful thing with her co-creator, and they sell lifetime access to it. So after the first day or 2 that you can watch it all for free, you can buy lifetime access. And I think I don't even know what they're charging for this year, but I think last year it was under $300 if my memory serves me right. But I know some of the people that were on there, and I bring this up because you made me think of the economic engine of our work, something a phrase that kind of came into my life not too long ago, about which has to do with finding something you're really good at and that you love, and then being able to sustain it. So maybe those couple things would be helpful just to explore the ideas, and maybe that episode that I mentioned I'm wondering, I don't know much about your community in the hip hop and rap world and the geographic territory you're at. And I know some of those things make a difference too, because I've heard various people on this podcast, for example, and I'm not to bash one place and praise another, just one example, but some couple who are super talented who tried Nashville for a while and just did not work. And comparatively, they've been in Austin, and there's the community is completely different for them, and that can be a very individual thing and can work in reverse, just as easily. But sometimes community makes a big difference. Obviously, those are both big music communities, and I'm sure you're kind of immersed in one as well. But anyway, I probably didn't say anything you didn't know, but sometimes we have to kind of look around for our community that we can serve, as you have said several times, and through which we can be served. Which brings me to another question for you. I have found it very interesting because I don't hear artists say things like this often, and I not to imply that nobody ever thinks it or doesn't say it outside of my ears, but you have said multiple times that when you're making your music, you've thought about bringing. I'm going to laugh a little bit, and I'll tell you why. But about bringing value to people when you're making it, and it sounds like more than just a great product. You're trying to truly give value to people. And I'm giggling again a little bit because you took a situation that was clearly not easy for you. You had the rough breakup, and instead of looking at it strictly as how can I channel this weird stuff I'm going through into something creative, or can I try to do that and see if it sort of helps me through this process, the relationship grieving thing, but you immediately thought, how can I turn this into something valuable? Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I guess in the last couple of years, so I've been in New York for quite some time, and I guess sort of my approach to life in general has changed from what do I want to how can I serve, and again, it just comes back to, I mean, I don't think it's anything to laugh at. I think even if you're completely unaware of this aspect that, your music or whatever you're doing can be beneficial to somebody else, if you don't think about that, a lot of times the reason why people connect with certain art is because it sheds a new perspective, a new dimension, or it just showcases the solidarity of the human condition. And again, going from what do I want to how do I best serve has also taken a lot of pressure and stress off me. So there isn't this sort of like white knuckled struggle to achieve. It's like, okay, I'm working on this one thing, or rather, I'm going through this thing in my life, and I know that other people are too, and it can be incredibly lonely if we don't have anybody to either speak to or anybody with whom we can connect on those certain things. And so instead of making, your typical rap song that is just, a turn up song that everybody can just vibe to, which is again, super awesome. And that needs to exist. But for me, it's just, it's made more sense to think about, okay, if I were listening to this, what would need to happen for me to kind of nod my head and be like, oh, wow, I didn't think of it this way. Or it's cool to know that there's, somebody else out there that's kind of going through through the same shit. So that's, and again, after, for instance, if you lose somebody that you love, specifically a partner, it's very easy to kind of fall into this sort of pattern of sulking or, creating just because you want to just get something off your chest. Whereas, the author Neil Gaiman at a commencement speech years ago said that no matter what's going on in your life, make good art. So if you get the opportunity of a lifetime to do something that you've always dreamed of, make good art. If you lose the job, make good art. If somebody, not to go morbid, but if somebody, dies in your close surrounding, make good art. And that's how I've been approaching a lot of these different projects.
That's cool, and it makes complete sense. And it's also interesting to me. You mentioned Neil Gaiman. I'm listening to an interview, not with him, but with Amanda Palmer, who I believe is his wife. Mm-hmm. But his name has come up a lot because of the same podcaster who sort of introduced me to a lot of his, or some of his work anyway, Neil Gaiman's. So, what was, speaking of writers or books, what was the title of that book that you mentioned that ties into the avoidance or anxious avoidance theme?
Ooh, I will have to get back to you on that. This is a very like straightforward scientific title. It's lying around somewhere in my room. I just need to find it. But honestly, if you just look up attachment theory on Google, there's attachment theory. Even the Wikipedia entry is significantly impactful if you look at it through the lens of your intercommunication with loved ones.
Okay, cool. I will look that up, and I thought maybe somebody else might be interested in that, which is why I asked. And then I want to ask you something about working with Renee, and I don't recall what kind of outfit she's with, but let's just say she's with an agency or she's her own agency. But what, if anything, have they asked of you, or did they ask of you to bring besides, the obvious, keep bringing us quality stuff? And I ask that for anyone who has either had a less than positive experience with a PR person or hasn't really known how to go about getting one, and maybe this would be something that would serve them. So did she ask you of anything to bring to the table in the partnership, or does she on a regular basis?
Actually, I think it's as simple as knowing what you want, knowing which direction you want to go, knowing, short-term goals and long-term goals, and really honing in on the best possible outcome. And this was, I think, about 2 years ago, where I was like, I'm doing a lot of these different things. It feels like, I'm not making progress on any of them. And so I decided to write a manifesto just for myself. And after I wrote this thing, kind of just a basic list of my values and what I want to achieve with my projects, and also the specific goals that I have for myself, and so on and so forth, that brought a lot of clarity and direction to our collective work together. And again, with a lot of these different projects, they're so divergent in nature that we really have to go project by project on a lot of them, saying like, okay, this would be fantastic for this type of audience, and this has a more like pop vibe, and so we should definitely reach out to these types of people. But again, it's just being very, very vocal, very clear, and as specific as possible. Because we all want growth, and we all want this, and we all want that. But once you can get surgical with intention, I think that makes things easier for everybody.
Did you find that, did she have to offer, because that sounds hard for at least some people, right? And maybe not what people would expect. And maybe Renee's different than other PR reps, but did you need any help with those things from her? Did she coach you? Did she act as a soundboard for you as you were trying to get clarity?
So my relationship with Renee has sort of grown organically for the past couple of years. It all started with me being completely clueless as to how to get my work out there and how to do it in an effective way. And then, I just gave a shout out, and something just came back from God, I don't want to use the word universe, but yeah, I kind of just like put out that sort of request, and I met Renee through it. And so Renee was also starting to work with other artists at that time. And so she wasn't working with too many clients, but it was a work in progress for the both of us. And I think if I were to start with a very well established PR rep, again, it's bringing everything that you know, everything that you want, kind of your ethos, again, even if you don't do any sort of art, just make a manifesto for yourself. So you understand yourself. But if you bring that to the table, the people can see it from a different perspective and be like, okay, so I see this as such, and we can package it as such. And you need to work on this, this, and that. But in the meantime, I'm going to start reaching out to people. So yeah, my experience with Renee is fairly unique because we were kind of both starting our careers at the same time, and she's grown in the past couple of years, and it's been amazing to see. But yeah, the one thing that really helps us in the day to day is for me to get my shit together and be like, okay, this is what we should do for the next month.
Very cool. And yeah, she actually introduced me to an artist named Tess Posner, who I should mention, and also mention for anyone who's listening to this that may not be anywhere near the rap or hip hop world, that Tess Posner is an artist who is, could be considered in an extremely different genre. She's in the pop scene too, but in kind of an electronic or almost house type of genre. Definitely a songwriter. So it sounds like Renee is. I don't even know where she's at, if she's taking clients, but for anyone who's thinking they might go see if they can find her. And I'll have to talk to her about this, but I thought I should put her info in the show notes episode. But she sounds versatile in what she does. So thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Glass, thank you for spending an hour with me. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll stay in touch. We'll talk to you soon.
I just don't want to go solo. I just don't want to go solo. I just don't want to go solo. I look at my own mother and I look right at her face, and I can tell that she thinks that I lost my fucking way. Like I got no plan, like rationale disintegrates before it hits my hands. But I ain't gonna worry now, I hurry up, iterate, I'm mapping hope in my utopia. All I got is love, all I got is love, all I got is love. Watch me blow this dream right up now. I can list the things that I'm going for. This short bucket list is a gift to my soul. I just want the freedom to breathe. I just want the ease of a breeze on my skin, and to see that my lover is pleased when I tease her. I wanna see all the seasons and feel something. I wanna speak in this meter and have you read me and connect with my conscience, my stream now. I just don't wanna go solo, and this shit is taking so long. But as I go up, we all go. But as I go up, we all go. I just don't wanna go solo, and this shit is taking so long. But as I go up, we all go. We all go, we all go, we all go. I just don't wanna go solo. They say that lyric poets should all die third. Like all the good shit comes when we write nice and early. But fuck, I learned things, live like I'm eternal. And now I earned it, blood is always working and searching for the merge of myself and an angel, but the servants, those corporeal urges, those thoughts they lurking, but the good are kept emerging. When you wade through it will surface. But here we go, now there's so little time. Even if I don't make it, I won't mind. But here we go now, here we go now. As far as I can see, I know it's all mine. I just don't wanna go solo, and this shit is taking so long. But as I go up, we all go. But as I go up, we all go. I just don't wanna go solo, and this shit is taking so long. But as I go up, we all go. We all go, we all go, we all go. I just don't wanna go solo, and this shit is taking so long. But as I go up, we all go. But as I go up, we all go. I just don't wanna go solo.
Hey, thanks for listening. Question for you. Are you struggling to move your music journey forward? I can help. If not personally, then by referring you to the next best available resources. Schedule a free 15-minute call with me to find out if I can indeed help you. It's easy. Just visit unstarvingmusician.com/coaching to schedule your call today. Look for links to just about everything covered in this episode in the show notes at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. This episode was powered by the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, how to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. It's available on paperback, Kindle, and ebooks just about everywhere you can find them. It's also available as a standalone podcast called the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. You can learn more about the book and companion podcast at unstarvingmusician.com/book. I'd love it if you picked up a copy and would love it even more if you left a review. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.